So we've got a crypto mortgage or Bitcoin mortgage, and then we've got a crypto loan product. With our mortgage, what we're really trying to solve for is homeownership. So if you want to buy a home, we want to really solve the pain point for you of not selling your Bitcoin. So we can finance 100% of the transaction. You're going to post your Bitcoin as collateral with us. It's going to sit with one of our qualified custodians, which is either Coinbase or BitGo. That collateral is going to sit there. We're going to have a lien on the property, and that's going to allow us to get comfortable to lend to you 100% of the value of the property. So you're not going to have to put any dollars into the transaction, which means you won't have to sell your Bitcoin, which could cause potentially a taxable event because you've owned it at a lower basis. You're not going to lose the opportunity of maybe Bitcoin going up 2, 3, 4, 5, 10x in the future, where now you no longer have that upside, and you're going to be able to qualify. So we're really trying to solve that. You're going to have the capital for 30 years. It's going to look like a mortgage, but we're really going to be able to give you that opportunity to buy that home today if you've got enough Bitcoin.
I hope you enjoy the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Bitcoin for Family show, where every guest is your new BFF. That's your Bitcoin friend forever. I'm Scott from Shamri, and it's an honor to have you here once again. Thanks to everybody that's been listening or watching. I hope you're finding this show fun and educational. And if you have been enjoying the show, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it. If you're feeling really generous, go ahead and drop a comment or a review as well. Every bit helps in spreading the word to other Bitcoin families. Now, on to this week's show. I'm excited to welcome a father of two to the show. Thanks for taking the time to join. Josip, Rupena, how you doing?
It's great. Pleasure to be on here. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for joining. It was great to kind of inadvertently connect a few weeks back when we were chatting about Milo, which we'll touch on during the show, since I'm sure there's a lot of families out there interested in some of those services as they're thinking about expanding, buying houses, that sort of stuff. But glad we were also able to send some books to your kids, and they're enjoying those as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think that the moment I saw that, it definitely grabbed my attention, because I've been trying to talk to my kids about Bitcoin, and this makes it fun for them. So
that's the idea. Well, we'd love to hear that. And so before we dive into some of the questions, maybe just tell the audience a bit about your family, maybe how many family members, their ages, whatever you're comfortable sharing.
Yeah. No, I've got two kids. They are 9 and 5. They have seen the journey that I've had, building a company that helps people with Bitcoin solve what I believe to be profound pain points like homeownership. And they've seen me talk about Bitcoin. They always ask me what's Bitcoin. So having to give them the explanations and trying to bring it down to a 5-year-old's level of understanding, we definitely get a kick out of every time we talk about Bitcoin. And rule number one, and maybe every rule, which is never sell your Bitcoin. So we get a kick out of that too.
Very nice. Well, we could touch on more of that as the conversation goes, but let's kick things off with some fun icebreakers. So question number 1. If you could swap the life with any cartoon character for a day, who would it be and what would you do?
That's a great one. I'm really into the Minions. The Minions are a family favorite. So I think that it'd probably be maybe Gru, since my kids are telling me that I'm starting to look like him, which I didn't think that was true, but then I started to look at myself in the mirror, and I think they're right. So I think Gru has a pretty good life, and he's got a wonderful family and lots of minions around.
Very nice. I'm not sure if it's the same thing. They kind of say an owner starts looking like their dog. I'm not sure if you watch the cartoon too often, you start looking like the cartoon.
Yep.
Very nice. So if you see the minions coming to Milo, then we know why.
That's it.
Question number 2. If you could time travel, either the past or the future, what family adventure would you go on?
Ooh. Probably go back in time to the Robinsons family, and sort of being in that treehouse to sort of be on that island and explore and do all of that and be with interesting characters. I think that's always been pretty fascinating that they were able to pull all that together. And that was a show I used to watch as a kid.
Have you had your kids start watching it and pulled out the old side?
Not yet. I think we are definitely watching Wednesdays on Wednesdays, right? So it came out last night, so they're into that a lot.
Very nice. Our kids are a little younger, so they weren't able to dive into Wednesday with us, but we did watch season 1. I haven't started season 2 yet, but did enjoy season 1. Okay, question number 3. If you could invent a holiday just for your family, what would you celebrate and how would you spend it?
Probably National Fishing Day. My kids love the ocean. We go to the beach a lot, and then they have recently started getting into fishing, so they like that. So I think it'd be fun to have a day where we know that's what we're doing.
Very nice. Everybody can come over for your house afterwards to eat up.
Yep.
Any particular fish you guys are catching?
They like catching mahi mahi or dorado, depending on where you live in the world. So that's a fun fish to catch. It's beautiful, it's colorful, it's a great fight, and it tastes really really good too.
Let's toss them in some tacos. Okay, next one. Where did the name Milo come from?
Yeah, so Milo was a play on words, so it was around my loan. So we sort of put that together. Our sort of mascot and our logo, right, has an owl in it. So that was one of the things that like I always had, when I was kind of in deep thought in different places, I'd have like these owls in my life sort of pop up. And when I was coming up with the idea for Milo, I had this baby owl that was in my backyard, and I saw it there, and I had the idea, and then it kind of played on it and kind of saying, okay, this is the wise owl, right? He's got experience, he's got wisdom. So it all came together, and we hired a great agency and allowed us to sort of bring all of it together. And if you look at our logo, we actually have a key on there, and then we were able to trademark unlock what's possible.
Very nice. Well, it's I guess fitting since you might have noticed our Shamari name is a plant combining two words too. So Shah from Shah 256 and Mori from memory. So
yeah,
perfect fit between Milo and Shamari.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, last icebreaker before we dive into the deeper stuff. What's the most unexpected talent your kids have surprised you with?
My little guy, diving. I mean, he's just like going in the water, and like I see him, and he's 5 years old, and he starts going down there, and like he's been obsessed with wanting to go lobstering with me. So he's like training, right? Like he's down there, he throws things in the water, he goes down there, and then like I look at him, I was like, who's this little guy that can do all this stuff? Like he's like an aqua baby, right? So it was pretty cool to see him sort of develop that and like self-motivated, like not pushing him. He's just like, I want to go out with my dad and catch lobsters. So
that's awesome. So you guys are free diving down for the lobsters?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Got the giant fins on and that sort of thing, or just going down?
Yeah, all of that. Yeah. So we live in South Florida, and there's a lot of lobster and lots of diving down here. We're pretty close to the Bahamas. So all of that has been part of our kids' lives growing up from very, very early days.
That sounds like a fun time to get out there. Any talents from the older one?
Ballet. She's just naturally just like really coordinated and can kind of do all of that. And she's just twirling around the house and kind of same thing, right? Like coordination and all of that. Also,
very nice.
Definitely cool. Doesn't get it from me. So
get it from the better half. Perfect. Well, that was fun. Speaking of the better half, let's dive into the deeper stuff. It's always fun to kind of start with kind of where did you and your wife meet? Kind of that story for the audience.
Yeah, so we met in Miami. So she is from Colombia, and she was visiting her aunt. She was doing an exchange program, and I was visiting my grandma, and she was there, and we were there for that summer. And I saw her, and she saw me, and then I was too shy to talk to her. And then a couple days passed by, and then eventually, I had the courage to go up to her and talk to her. And she was a little shy, and I was shy, and we were two young kids, and someone runs by and says, just give him your number already. And like, that guy, is probably who changed the trajectory of my life. And we've been together now for 20 years. But, I thank that guy every day because it was one of the best decisions I've ever made.
That fate had it, that person come by at the right time. And so you mentioned her being from Colombia. I know your family speaks multiple languages, English and Spanish, or are there other ones that are tossed in there?
Yeah, mostly English and Spanish. My dad's from Croatia and my mother's from Chile, and they met in Miami in the 80s. And my father, from where he was from, was very close to Italy. So he was able to pick up Spanish a little easier than my mom picking up Croatian. And living in South Florida and Miami, right? My dad was around Spanish, so we grew up as a household speaking Spanish at home.
Got it. So you were born in the States?
Yeah, I was born in Miami.
Got it. Do you spend a lot of time international from your families in those destinations, or mostly?
Not anymore. I used to. So I grew up being a tennis player. So I was fortunate to travel around the world playing junior tournaments all over the world. So I got to travel a lot, and I haven't done as much traveling now as I've gotten older, but definitely try to do it with my kids and take them to fun places and get them to experience what different cultures have to offer, and that element of what that does, and opening up your mind to see things from around the world and experiencing some of different types of food, dialects, architecture, and all of that. So.
Have they gotten to go down to Colombia?
They have, yeah. So we have an office down in Colombia. We've got some engineers in Cali, but my wife's family is from close to Cartagena and Barranquilla. So they've been down there. They've been to Bogota. So they've spent a decent amount of time there.
Very nice. And then, so as far as the languages go, your kids are both bilingual?
They are.
Speaking both. What do you guys speak mostly in the home?
We wish it was more Spanish. But now as our kids have gotten into school, they're definitely speaking a lot more English. I think it's just they're hearing it all the time. So we definitely have to bring out the Spanish and talk to them. And I think we're also speaking mostly in English, so we catch ourselves and having to remind ourselves that if we don't talk to them in Spanish, no one will.
Yep. But the onus on yourselves, and obviously, being in Miami is a very diverse culture, so that probably does play into some of the desire to want to upkeep that kind of dual language side of things.
Yeah, I think it's an important element, right? I think that there's nothing like speaking to someone that you've just met in sort of maybe their native language. I think it definitely helps to sort of build that bond in that relationship. It's served me very, very well to be able to speak Spanish. So I think that hopefully they can do that. And I think it's also important for them to be able to communicate with their family because they don't speak English.
Yep, totally. And having your wife from Colombia and then your side of the family, as you guys started dating and then getting married and having kids, what was kind of the blending of the cultures like? Anything nuances there that come to mind?
I think it's just appreciation for the food. Right, it's just different food. So one of the things that we do as a family is that we make sure that on the weekends we do the breakfast. So I'll cook pancakes or waffles or French toast or crepes. So we've definitely mixed in some more Colombian flavored food in there, and my kids have definitely gotten a chance to enjoy something a little different.
Very, very nice. And so, kind of turn over to the Milo side of things. We mentioned earlier where the name came from. But where did the actual idea come from to launch Milo?
Yeah, so I was working at a big bank. I was working at Morgan Stanley, and this was around sort of 2017. I was looking at what was happening in the space, and we had sort of just gone through like the ICO wave, and Bitcoin it's always been the largest crypto asset, but you started to see sort of Ethereum and some of these newer projects, and I assumed, and my hypothesis was that it would be great if all these assets continue to appreciate, but at some point people would need to do something real with it, right? They would want to buy a home. They would want to probably diversify. They would want to sort of live their lives. And, if products that were primarily loans and lending, if that didn't exist, then it would force people to have to sell their Bitcoin before they could maybe achieve some of the benefits of the appreciation of these assets. And that was around sort of 2016. And then fast forward to sort of 2019, was doing really, really well at the firm. But that itch of wanting to sort of build a company and be able to solve some pain points, I got comfortable with the idea of basically building Milo around helping international clients buy real estate in the US. And we were fortunate enough to have some great investors and great individuals to support us, give me the confidence. My wife was still finishing her master's, becoming a nurse practitioner. So we were trying to make sure that our personal lives were really set foundationally before we could go out and start this company and embark on this journey. But I started the company around that. We were going to do mortgages for international clients. And fast forward a couple years into that, my personal desire around, Bitcoin and seeing what's happening, and like no one had solved for this yet around the homeownership stuff. There was the aspect of crypto loans that were happening, but I didn't feel like that was really solving the pain point, right? A crypto loan is great. There's been, call it $80 billion of crypto loans that have been originated globally for the last 9 years, but it didn't solve the pain point of homeownership. And homeownership requires you to take out a loan that you need to be able to keep for a long period of time. And crypto loans were 1 year in duration. They were fairly high interest rates. They required a lot of additional collateral. And I didn't feel like they actually solved maybe some of that uniqueness of a homeownership. But we were fortunate that we were already doing mortgages for a differentiated customer. We had basically established lines of capital with different institutions and had a framework to be able to do this. So when we were able to sort of launch this product in 22, we felt like we were in a good place. But I think it was a 6-year process to sort of eventually get there, which I think, most ideas, right? Sometimes you think about them and it takes a little bit of time for the world to change. And you think about now, right? We launched this product in 22, and now we're really starting to see a lot of interest and adoption more recently by some of the regulators and, people sort of in, Pulte, at the FHFA and other groups that are speaking about this, which I think is bringing more awareness into it. But it was an early thought in 2016. It was an early idea in 22. And then maybe hopefully now we're getting into that, just right. Not too hot, not too cold, and just right.
Yeah, just kind of the tip of the iceberg before it accelerates. And, so for this audience, there's going to be a lot of families out there thinking about listening. So for those kind of that demographic, they're thinking about buying a house, going on a trip, or, any number of other things they might want to do with their Bitcoin. What advice do you give them as they start kind of learning about the lending process and how that goes?
Yeah, I think there's this idea around sort of taking on debt, which is a negative. And most people think it's a negative thing, and the reality is like there's good debt and there's bad debt, right? So I think if you are using or you're going to leverage your Bitcoin to be able to borrow essentially dollars, um, you just have to decide whether that's going to be good or bad debt for you, right? Sometimes maybe taking a vacation might not be the smartest decision, but it is the right decision for you and for your family because it creates those memories, right? So there's going to be something that you get out of it. In our case, right, helping people buy homes, we think that that's very important because it's an important milestone, right? I think it's very different for you knowing that you own you own your home, for your significant other to know that you own something, that you have something, your kids, right? The community, the neighborhood, right? The childhood memories, right? There's all of these things that sometimes you can't really put a number on it, but they add a lot of value to you and to your life. So as you think about the opportunity around borrowing against your Bitcoin, which again is most likely for most of us going to be our best performing investment of anything we will probably ever do in our lifetimes, you don't want to get rid of that, but you do have to live your life. So I think finding products potentially like ours around homeownership or a crypto loan, if there's something else that you want to do with it, you just have to look at it from conceptually of saying, okay, is this going to really give me a lot of value? Because there's going to be a cost to it, right? And that cost is going to be, you're going to have to make interest payments. You're going to have to pay it back. Can you do that? But, I think that element of having that opportunity to access things like this, I think at least it gives you a choice. And then you just have to decide whether it's the right thing for you at the right time.
No, very, very true. For those, there might be some people out there listening that don't even really understand the process of how one of those loans works. Maybe can you walk the audience through kind of that general process?
Yeah. So Milo's got two different products, right? So we've got a crypto mortgage or Bitcoin mortgage, and then we've got a crypto loan product. With our mortgage, what we're really trying to solve for is homeownership. So if you want to buy a home, we want to really solve the pain point for you of not selling your Bitcoin. So we can finance 100% of the transaction. You're going to post your Bitcoin as collateral with us. It's going to sit with one of our qualified custodians, which is either Coinbase or BitGo. That collateral is going to sit there. We're going to have a lien on the property, and that's going to allow us to get comfortable to lend to you 100% of the value of the property. So you're not going to have to put any dollars into the transaction, which means you won't have to sell your Bitcoin, which could cause potentially a taxable event because you've owned it at a lower basis. You're not going to lose the opportunity of maybe Bitcoin going up 2, 3, 4, 5, 10x in the future, where now you no longer have that upside, and you're going to be able to qualify. So we're really trying to solve that. You're going to have the capital for 30 years. It's going to look like a mortgage, but we're really going to be able to give you that opportunity to buy that home today if you've got enough Bitcoin. In our example today, $1 million home, and we're going to need $1 million of Bitcoin. Now, the reason why we need $1 million of Bitcoin is because Bitcoin has been volatile over the last 15 years. And we don't want to put you in a situation where you don't have enough collateral, and then you have to post more. And then ultimately it makes you maybe make a dramatic decision, but it keeps you in that home. So that's our first product. Our second product is a crypto loan. And what we're really trying to solve for this is someone who has a certain amount of Bitcoin, you can borrow against it. You can use it for different use cases, but it's meant to be a very quick turnaround solution, right? Those loans. So if you come to us, you've got $100,000 of Bitcoin, you can borrow $50,000 from us. You can access it. In most cases, we're giving you the dollars. We're sending it to your bank within the same day. So that product, if you had to go to a bank and say, I'd like a loan, or any type of lender, right, might take a long period of time. In this case, we're not really looking at a lot of the other sort of traditional factors because we understand what the value of Bitcoin is. We like it as collateral, and we're comfortable lending to someone on a very, very accelerated basis, and they can pay it back whenever they want. And that usually is a 1-year loan, which is meant for shorter term elements. You can extend it, but it's meant to be a blank canvas of what you decide to do with the fund.
That makes sense. And one of the worries people might have is, okay, I'm sending you the Bitcoin. You mentioned the 2 qualified custodians, but kind of how do you guys make your customers feel secure and knowing, Bitcoin's there, it's not rehypothecated, that sort of side of things?
Yeah, look, I think that there definitely is that element, right? I think there's been a lot of actors in the past that haven't done things in the right way, where a lot of people have been burned primarily because of their business decisions and their other business lines. In our case, this is all we do, right? We do loans, we give people capital. We want to make sure that that capital is paid back, and we want to make sure that the collateral is safe. In this case, the collateral that they transfer to us, in the case of a crypto mortgage, if you want to buy $1 million home, you're going to send us $1 million of Bitcoin. But we are also giving you $1 million of our capital, right? So that capital is going to go to the seller. So you are getting almost an equal amount of ours versus yours, right? So we have skin in the game. Now, that capital and that Bitcoin that's given to us, it's collateral. It's collateral for us to protect our position in the event that you can't make payments for a number of reasons. it gives us comfort. So we don't want to be taking any type of risk with the collateral that we have, because ultimately that would impair our position. So we're keeping things as simple as possible and as prudent as possible, because this collateral is something that actually protects us as well. So we don't want to be taking any risk, right? There's no margin for error to lose any Bitcoin to anyone or any counterparty, which is why we choose to work with these two, because in Coinbase's case, right, they're holding hundreds of billions of dollars in collateral, right? They hold 80% of the Bitcoin for the broader ETFs that are out there. They're a publicly traded company. There's a lot of transparency there. They're regulated, they're audited. And the same thing with BitGo, right? BitGo holds over $100 billion of Bitcoin for a broad array of institutional players. And they're the ones that we have felt comfortable with because they've been able to do things right over multiple periods of time. And we feel very comfortable with them as custodians. In the event that that would change, then we would introduce new custodians that would pass our diligence. But for the time being, they're the ones that we're.
No, it makes complete sense. And the other worry that might come up is just around kind of that liquidation level. Are there different processes that you guys have in place to make the customers feel more secure and being able, whether it's like topping up or making that process easier to kind of alleviate those concerns?
Yeah,
for
clients
people?
have a portal, so they'll know exactly where their collateral position is. Naturally, right? If you have a loan with us, where the price of Bitcoin is. You're watching it, more or less what those levels are. I think that there are, we send out notifications and notices, but there's always an opportunity to add additional collateral as we start to get closer to those margin calls. They're generally not a surprise, right? You know what they are going into it. You're going to know what they are during the loan. And then it's going to be your decision how you want to handle that, right? Do you want to pay the loan back sooner? Do you want to basically pay off some of the balance to basically bring the threshold down? Do you want to transfer more collateral, right? There's a lot of different options for a lot of clients that choose to do this. I think that this is a part where I wish products had no margin calls, but it's the volatility is a blessing and a curse, right? Depending on what side that you're on, right? We like when Bitcoin appreciates. We don't like it when it goes the other direction, but I think that that's just a function of these products. I think that the uniqueness of the mortgage versus the loan is in the mortgage, because we have a lien on the property, we're able to give more room for that margin call and the value of that collateral to come down, versus on the loan, that's the only form of collateral you have for repayment, and that margin call is a little bit shallower than on the mortgage side.
What does it? So for those that are interested on the mortgage side, what does kind of that structure look like?
So it's usually roughly about a 65% drawdown. So in that $1 million home example, Bitcoin could go down to 350. And then, that gives you enough ample room. And the way we looked at this when we were creating the product in 21 and 22, was we looked at the last, sort of 3 or 4 sort of, drawdown periods. And we felt that would give you to a place where you may not need to experience a margin call. Like, it would have to be a pretty significant outlier event for that to happen. And, the first loans that we did in April of 22, Bitcoin was at 40,000 and it went down to 15,000. And no client ever had to send us more collateral in those situations. Some chose to send us some more collateral just for their own peace of mind, but it wasn't a requirement, right, from a margin call situation.
Makes sense. And on the mortgage sides, are those available U.S., statewide, international?
So we're lending on the mortgage side there in the U.S. So we're lending across most states. See, there's a lot of variance around sort of state by state regulation, and what we can do in one state may not be acceptable in the other. So we wish that it was an even level playing field across all of the U.S. Unfortunately, that's not the landscape that we play in, right? We've got over 12 different lending licenses across different states and more on the way, but we are in most of the major states.
Very nice. And is just for primary homes, rental homes, investment homes?
All kinds of homes. Primarily, we've been focused on investment properties because that's where people have been looking at leveraging their Bitcoin to try to make income from investment properties. We do know that a lot of clients want to buy their first home, and those are the things that we're continuing to iterate on that product to try to deliver a better experience for people that are trying to buy that first home.
Very nice. And, thinking about your customers that are out there, have you heard any stories that come to mind from parents that have been able to use their service to better their families?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There's been a lot of them. I think that one of our busiest days in the last couple of years was actually, I'll ask you, what do you think our busiest day from a traffic and outreach was in the last 2 years?
I don't know if a particular day would come to mind. I mean, the first thing that pops in my head is for some reason when the ETFs got approved, but I don't know if that would.
Yeah, there was a lot of activity around that, but it was actually January 1st of this year at roughly 1 a.m. And we didn't understand why. And then we spoke to some clients, and it was because Bitcoin had eclipsed roughly around 100,000, and we had just rolled over into the new year. And I'm sure there was a lot of families, that told their significant others, "Hey, remember when you told me when Bitcoin was 100,000, we would look at buying a home, and the time has come." So let's look at this more seriously. So that's one story, and then the other story was with a client that we were working with that fortunately he had amassed a lot of Bitcoin, a lot of Bitcoin, many millions, tens of millions of dollars in Bitcoin, and they were living in a very modest home, and proportional to their net worth, right? They could have afforded something really nice, and they kept living in this home because he refused to sell any Bitcoin, and his wife called us up right after he discovered Milo, and she's the one who actually found us. And she told him, like, you better now finally get us the house for our family that we've been talking about for all these years. You can't make any more excuses that you're not going to sell your Bitcoin. You're not going to do this. Like, Milo is the solution for us. And we were able to get them a really nice home in the Midwest that, was around $1 million home. And they were able to buy their dream home with our product and for them and for their kids.
Very nice. So you acted kind of like that guy that was going by and helping you and your future wife. You helped them save their marriage on the back end.
Quite
for
possibly.
the house.
Quite possibly, right? So I think that they were definitely one of those great stories where we knew we had a pretty profound impact on their lives, and I think they're going to buy more homes in the future, and I think that they're going to continue to use us, and I think that that's one of the things that I'm really proud of. That now we have lots of clients that haven't just taken out one loan with us, but multiple loans, and they're going to continue to use us because I think we're really solving a need.
Yep. And I think you touched on an important thing out there for many people in the families that are out there. A lot of times it is just one side, the father or maybe the mother who are on the Bitcoin train, and the other one's waiting for those magic numbers. And so being able to find that balance and have services like this, does help. The other question people might have is just kind of around interest rates. What does that look like? And
yeah, so for us,
sort of
our interest rates naturally are a little bit higher than what traditional mortgage rates are. Right? Traditional mortgage rates are somewhere in the 7s. We're going to be in the 9s. Primarily, that's because we have a higher cost of capital, right? We have to tap into certain pools of capital, and the rates are a little bit higher. The way we like to think about it is because you're not having to pay capital gains taxes that you would normally pay with a regular loan, that higher cost of capital is okay, right? I would like it to be lower, but we're tied to essentially where rates are, right? Like the first transactions we did, I think we did them somewhere in the 4s. Right. So today they're somewhere in the 9s, right? I think that as rates come down, right, the rates will be lower. I think the other thing that a lot of people sometimes forget is when you take out a regular mortgage and you put a 20% or 30% down payment, that really sits there as sort of dead money, right? And that dead money is money that you're not earning 4 or 5%, or maybe you're not buying Bitcoin with it, where it's appreciating, right, at 60 or 70%, right, annualized. So there's a real drag to that. And if you add that into the equation of the interest cost, that traditional mortgage interest rate, which on the surface might look like it's lower, actually is much higher, right? So we really like to help people sort of understand that this is not like any other mortgage. You have to think about it from a total return perspective, what you're not paying in taxes, what the appreciation of the Bitcoin is, how will I do at the end of 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years with this product? And I think that we've already seen it in a 2-year period that it's not even comparable. So sometimes maybe a slightly higher interest rate cost is an acceptable trade-off, if you're going to be able to make a lot more money and build a lot more wealth because of the product.
And are those rates fixed or variable?
They're fixed. Yeah. So we tie them. They're fixed. Naturally, right, if someone wanted to refi in the future, right, because rates are lower, right, then they would be able to do so.
How do you kind of see the landscape changing over the coming years now that some of the more, call them traditional lenders out there may be opening their doors to these sorts of services? Do you see a positive, a negative for you guys, or where do you kind of see that landscape
I think
going?
it's a net positive, right? I think it's a net positive because I think that ultimately, most mortgages, whether you're a lender in our case, right, we lend our capital, we need to be able to access more pockets of capital, right, to lend more. So if there's a broader acceptance around the underlying assets and Bitcoin as a whole, and that means we're going to be able to access more capital. And as we access more capital, right, we're going to be able to continue to lend out more. And the things that we haven't been able to do over the years, we'll be able to offer more and broaden our opportunity set. And, I'm still a firm believer that just because the government says they're going to do something, it's going to take some time. Maybe takes a lot of time. And I fundamentally believe that just because something exists, it doesn't mean you solve the pain points of that particular person, right, or that set of clients. So I think that we really understand what we're trying to solve for. And I think we do a good job at it. So I think that companies like Milo are going to continue to exist. I don't see a world where the government is going to lend 100% of the value of a mortgage, right? I think there were some elements of the past, right, with the financial crisis that has left a pretty big scar on people. So I think it's going to continue to take companies like ours and probably many others, right, to continue to iterate on what are real needs and creating programs that really solve those pain points. And it's probably not going to come from very, very, very large institutions, which they're really thinking about how do we grow the pie of $2 trillion in mortgages and not necessarily maybe the opportunity set of, a few $1 billion of mortgages or $5 billion of mortgages, right? Which, I think it'll grow, but it's a pretty big difference, right, in numbers.
Yeah. And one thing that we've touched on a little bit and that people always worry about is kind of, that liquidation level to the downside. But as Bitcoin appreciates, like you mentioned numerous times, you'll have that appreciation to the upside. Do clients have the ability to withdraw Bitcoin if that collateral gets too high?
Yeah. We've returned a lot of collateral to clients, a lot of collateral. We've heard it from different clients, right? Some of them have said, thank you because you've helped me from selling the Bitcoin. You kept it away from me from hitting the sell button. And then others, want the collateral back because, they're just viewing it saying, look, we just have so much collateral in it. And in our case, we pay significant custody fees, right, to keep, Bitcoin in cold storage and, and those types of wallets. So we have to pay these custodians. So for us, it's always been essentially a liability from a cost perspective. So I'm happy to return collateral if it makes sense. I think that if a client wants it and we're above a threshold, that's enough.
And kind of looking ahead, are there any new products in the pipeline that you can share?
Yeah, I mean, we're continuing to think about sort of just the structure and the offering, right? Can we do something where, the margin call is different or less or no margin call? What are sort of these elements that we're playing around with? I think that when we started the product, we had a lot of interesting features. And then in reality, we felt that we needed to just keep it very simple. But, I think that in my mind, as someone who, designs products and comes up with different concepts, there's always this element of how do we make things better and be able to serve more people. So I think that's really our focus right now is how do we say yes more often, and I think that's what we're focused on. And I think a big part of that for us is going to be all of these things that are happening in the world, right? If we can access maybe different or deeper pockets of capital, then I think that's going to allow us to even build a better offering, which I'm excited for.
Very nice. And be excited to see all that evolved. And kind of flipping it back to the family side, how do you, being in the Bitcoin finance industry for a number of years and before that, the traditional side, how do you really teach your kids about, Bitcoin, financial literacy, money, some tips there for the families that are out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think explaining Bitcoin, I think it's not easy, right? It's not easy talking to them about Satoshi and, this mythical person, right, that we know, from the early days, right, was a real person, but is no longer here or not that vocal, right? Like it's hard to sort of highlight that. I think as time goes on, though, I think that gives it this sort of magical sort of like aura around like how Bitcoin was created, which I think for them is fun to believe because it's like it's a really great story, right? This person Satoshi came along and built Bitcoin and blockchain and gave this to the world, and no longer is there, right? Like if you were to draw up the story and say 100 years in the future or 200 years in the future, like that would be an amazing story. And I try to talk to them in that way. We joke around a lot, right? Don't sell your Bitcoin, right? Like my hope and my belief, right, is to pass on my Bitcoin to my kids, and I hope they pass on their Bitcoin to their kids, and it continues to be sort of this everlasting, lifelong, generational asset for our kids. So I'm definitely trying to get them to do that. And my kids make fun of me and they say, "No, I'm going to sell the Bitcoin. I'm going to sell the Bitcoin." But like, then you're not going to get the Bitcoin.
Yeah, hide it from you. Hide those keys. No, it's definitely a nuance there. And kind of beyond Bitcoin, what's a tradition from your life that you hope your kids carry forward as they grow up and become parents themselves one day, maybe?
Oh, that's a great one. Yeah, I think we've definitely sort of set certain traditions and days of the week around, like for us, right? Like Fridays, right? We make sure that that's pizza night. My kids are sort of like growing in and we watch movies and just sort of like these like little traditions where they kind of like they look forward to it around holidays like Thanksgiving. So I think it's just sort of like these markers where hopefully, right, as we get older and my wife and I age, and then hopefully they have kids, and then these traditions are sort of passed on, right? Like the Saturday breakfast, right? These little things that life. There's always a lot going on, and it's complicated, but it's just like these things that you do that you don't really have to think about. You just know that they're going to happen, and sort of keeping these simple things that kind of keep you grounded with everything.
Perfect thing. So you can go over to their house for those breakfasts, let them cook for you down the line.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Perfect. Well, before we move on to the final two questions of this show, I just want to remind the audience that you're welcome to use code BFF Show at Shamri.com for 10% off. Happy to send you books, games, anything else, and get those into your household and your kids' hands. And so let's wrap things up with the final two questions, like every episode. And question number one, a common saying in the Bitcoin space is Bitcoin is time. Another belief is that time is the scarcest asset the world has ever created. So playing off of all that, What is the biggest gift of time that learning about Bitcoin has provided you and your family?
Look, I think that one of the things is the idea of just like compounding and dollar cost averaging, right? I think it's just the one thing that we never think about because everybody's like, okay, if I were to buy Bitcoin and I bought it today, eh, everyone assumes you need to buy a large amount of Bitcoin and that's it. And the reality is like you don't need to, right? Like Bitcoin is this asset which is designed with scarcity in mind, right? There's only going to be 21 million Bitcoin, and I don't think there are 21 million in Bitcoin, right? I think that a third of that is probably lost forever, right? So there's probably even less Bitcoin available for the people that don't have Bitcoin. So I think the biggest lesson to me is that reality, just sort of like that consistency of just saying, look, buy a certain amount of Bitcoin that you don't have to think about it. Just do it consistently and do it over a period of time. And if it's higher, then great. And if it's lower, then you buy more Bitcoin. And you just keep doing that. But I think that element of investing in a way where it doesn't impact your life one way or the other, but then you look back on it 10 years and it has been transformational. And I think for a lot of people, and we've seen that firsthand from our clients and even me personally, of what that has done. And most importantly, right, just start right away, right? You're never going to be able to time it, right? Just buy a little bit, keep buying, and then look back on it like 10 years, like with most great investments.
Teach them that low time preference. Hard skill to master, but once they do,
yeah,
it'll benefit them in
and
many ways.
It's played out with so many investments, right? It's not just Bitcoin, right? Like if you would have bought, great stocks and great companies, which at the time, right, a lot of people bought them just because they like the brand, right? Like they like what they symbolize for, and they just bought some of it and they just kept buying some more of it, and then you go back 10 years, 15 years, and you're like, wow, this has been an amazing investment. But it was started because you just bought some, right? And I think that sometimes a lot of people wish, oh, if I would have only bought Bitcoin when it was $100, right? Or $10 or $1,000. Well, that's not going to happen. But would you be upset if Bitcoin was $1 million and you bought it today, right? You'd make 10 times your money. You'd probably still be really happy with that. So not trying to look for the perfect outcome, but just the right outcome, right? Get the right direction and not necessarily in the right asset, right?
No, totally. Last question. If you had one Bitcoin to give each of your kids, at what age would you give them the keys and why?
That's a great question. That's a really, really good question. And I think one that, many of us are going to have to be faced with, right? Like, when are we going to do that? Yeah, I hope that there are going to be more companies that are going to make this easier, right? I think this aspect, right, of thinking about, self-storage and self-custody and all of that, I think that it's an amazing opportunity, but there's also some elements that are incredibly scary about that. And I think that, the adoption that you're seeing now with, more institutional players coming in, companies that now allow you to basically buy Bitcoin and get exposure to it through ETF. But there's just different ethos of what you're trying to solve for, right? And I think that element of, okay, someone needs to physically hold their Bitcoin because I really am that scared of the world is a certain mindset, right? I think that, I want my kid to have a Bitcoin because of what it symbolizes, that it's that the ability of having the power of being able to have your assets and having control, and what that symbolizes to you as a person, that you do have some of that power left, that you aren't just entrusting everything to your institutions. But I think we're probably some ways away from that, because I think that what Bitcoin means to us, because we have seen Bitcoin grow and evolve, it'll be something very different for them because they won't have the origins of Bitcoin in that story. So they may think less of it as an asset and what it means versus for us, right? For them, they might just look at it as a number, but not really understanding what it means. Now, I fundamentally think that it will continue to change the world and will be this very significant asset, and the people that have it will be in a very, very unique position. But I think that, to your original question, it's probably going to be one of the things when I think they understand it and they appreciate it enough. And I don't know when that's going to come, but I don't think it's going to be anytime soon.
And when they stop threatening you to sell it all.
Maybe that's it. Maybe when they can tell me, and maybe as you continue to write great books as they age and give them the wisdom to really understand what Bitcoin has meant, because I think it's one of those assets that it's not like anything else that we've ever had, right? At least in our lifetimes. So that's a tremendous responsibility.
It definitely is. Well, this has been a fun conversation. I'm sure a lot of the audience out there will get benefit out of learning more about Milo, kind of the services that are out there. I know it's a topic that comes up all the time for families that are there. So thanks a bunch for jumping on the show, for having the books in your house. I'll be sure to link to Milo in the show notes, but any other final words or places you want to let the audience know about?
Yeah, no, I think that there's definitely one last thought, right? And I think that, we've already seen it with certain clients, right? I think that some people say, here, I don't have enough Bitcoin, right? Or, I might not be able to use Milo's product today, but, I think that what I kind of highlighted, that, that consistency of buying Bitcoin and seeing it grow. And, some of our clients that didn't have a lot, 2-3 years ago, today, they do have enough to work with us, and our product's going to continue to evolve. Not to get discouraged that I don't have enough Bitcoin. No, like Bitcoin is going to continue to increase in value. And at some point, right, you are going to be able to access some of these products, as long as you continue to have Bitcoin and keep it as part of your life. I think that we're all going to continue to evolve. So if the desire is to buy a home one day with Bitcoin, then you're going to be able to achieve it. It's going to happen for everybody.
Nope. Go back to that low tide preference, take those steps, and you'll get there. Well, perfect final words. Like I said, I'll link to everything out there. And it's been a fun conversation. Appreciate it. And thanks to everybody for watching and listening. We'll catch you next week. Bye.
Thank you for having me on.
Hi, thanks for joining. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a good review. And buy your kids some stuff at Summary.com today. Bye. 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 Bye.